And we're live.
Hi, Gabriella. Hi, Tim.
And today we have Gabriella Russo on, who is part of the youth worker mafia, I understand, or the educational mafia. We've had a few people on. Can you briefly start by telling us what you do, why it excites you, and whether you can play the ukulele or not?
That's a really cheeky start. So I am currently launching my own business as a safeguarding trainer. So I am starting to work with some borough councils in London, and I'm working with some groups in the Midlands, currently focusing on training foster carers around online safety, but also doing a piece with a mental health charity around their sort of full kind of safeguarding training for their staff, and working on a few other bits and pieces.
Okay, so how did
and I can sort of play the ukulele, but not enough to perform.
Yeah, well, it's only because there seems to be like some sort of small instrument next to you, or whatever the opposite side. That's is that just something you have hanging around, or do you play?
No, I've got it here because I'm learning online with a group, and so this is where I Zoom with them. Yeah.
So how did you get from working with children and all the rest of it to starting your own business? I mean, what was that journey like? What were you doing that kind of made you think, oh, this is the way I want to go?
Okay. Work, schools, Christian ministry, youth work, children's work, all that kind of stuff over the years. And then I think it's probably about 8 years ago, I started working in anti-human trafficking. So I was working with an organisation called Stop the Traffic. And I was also working with the Salvation Army modern slavery team. So I was doing two different things. With Stop the Traffic, I was doing training. So we were training frontline workers around the signs of trafficking, how to spot it, what to do, etc., etc. I was also teaching sort of modern slavery kind of lessons in schools. We did some work in primary schools and secondary. I lectured at a couple of universities, various bits and pieces. I had some real fun adventures doing that. I had a cohort of about 50 vicars for a parish at one point. I was teaching them all about trafficking and things like that. So like all sorts of different people. We were working with magistrates, people in medicine, etc. And then on the other side with the Salvation Army, I was actually working with victims of trafficking. So I was part of the team that was doing the NRM, National Referral Mechanism interviews, which is the interview for potential victims to find out if they are victims so they can get the support they need. So I was doing those two different things, which really kind of opened my eyes to obviously all of that stuff, but also gave me a real flavour of doing training. And I just love kind of working with people and teaching them and having those light bulb moments and kind of seeing them go away a little bit changed. And then from there, I worked at the NSPCC for just over 4.5 years until autumn just gone. And I was working actually in primary schools delivering the anti-abuse programme that the NSPCC has. And I was doing a little bit of training. And then my time there came to an end, and I did a bit of voluntary training and then got offered some paid work. And I thought, oh gosh, I can actually do this. And realised that actually it's really my passion. Just love that bold moment with people. So I decided to bite the bullet and set myself up.
Setting yourself up in business is something we love to talk about around here. Tim has his own business somewhat. He's written books, and I've, as you know, I've written started my own business, launched over the summer.
Tell us your apparel.
Yes, my apparel that has to do with, well, this is why I love this about you, because it has to do with abuse, and it's a little bit of how we connected. But tell us a little bit more about the process of starting a business, because it's not easy.
Oh my gosh, no. I think one of the things I really liked about the idea of starting my own business was being my own boss. I also am not what you would call an admin ninja by any stretch of the imagination. Like a lot of youth workers and so on, like admin is our nemesis. And I found in a lot of the work that I was doing before that it was so admin heavy and there were so many different protocols, and I wasn't having enough direct contact. It was a lot more about admin in lots of ways. So for me, being able to sort of book myself with an organisation, go and speak, train them, interact with people, etc., and, you know, be able to just do good enough admin to be able to do the thing I'm really passionate about was one of the things that kind of really drew me in. So setting it up has been a bit of a process. I've got a business coach who is amazing, absolutely amazing. His name's Will Taylor. If you're watching, hi, Will. And he's just absolutely fantastic and really drew out of me kind of the whys and the hows, you know, what's really in your heart to do. But has also really helped me practically. So it's been things like bank account, registering as a sole trader with the government and all of that kind of stuff. And then looking at how you start to promote yourself. So really, I just happen to be really, really lucky with my friends. So I've got a friend who's an amazing photographer who's done a photo shoot with me to go on publicity. I've got another friend who is helping me with the copy for a website and sort of all over that kind of stuff. And actually, she's now setting herself up as self-employed to actually do that stuff as well. I belong to a group of entrepreneurs on Facebook, which is a neurodiverse group, and they've been fantastic. We have a virtual office every week, and we have a meeting every week where we all share things that we're struggling with, and different people with different sort of expertise step in and help you. So one of them's helped me set up my LinkedIn and do you know what I mean, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got virtual office, which gives you like specific time where you're accountable that you're working. So I'm really at that stage with a few projects going on with a few different councils that's kind of keeping me ticking over a little bit as I start to build the platform. And it makes me sound like I really know what I'm doing, which is great.
Yeah, well, that is nine-tenths of what running a business is, pretending you know what you're doing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, we've got the viral tweet master, Christelle, on the thing after her.
Oh, yes.
How many retweets did you get on that tweet in the end, Christelle? Just anybody?
How many retweets? I think I'm at like
4,500, wasn't it? More than that, 17,000.
17,000, I think, retweets. But you know, so Tim said, Christelle, you're ready to write a book about how to go viral. And I said, what the title is, I have no idea what I'm doing, or it's all about luck.
Anyway, that was a bit of a
veg can help you go viral.
Yeah. I was going to circle back to the human trafficking thing, which might sound like a happy topic, but I think it's important in terms of what sort of things should people be looking out for? Let's say they're sort of in a local area. How can you tell that somebody might have been trafficked? I mean, that to me wouldn't seem something that necessarily would be an obvious thing for people in general. I mean, hopefully it's fairly unlikely that people in the public would have people they notice, but what kind of things should people be looking for in terms of human trafficking signs?
I think there's lots of different areas that it can be divided down into. So there's stuff around knowing individuals, and particularly when you're working with children and young people, kind of watching out really for signs of grooming is really the thing. So then becoming much more in themselves. Perhaps they have gifts that they couldn't afford. They're out a lot more. They're much more. Sorry, the cat's just arrived.
Yeah.
There she is. Off you go. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult with teenagers because they can be pretty kind of closed off anyway, but really spotting kind of changes in emotion, perhaps feeling a lot more stressed out, all of that kind of thing. In terms of out there in general, there are definitely areas and businesses that are perhaps more inclined towards that kind of, or where you'll spot things. So nail bars are very much a front for trafficking. So a lot of the girls who are working in the nail bars are actually being trafficked as well, or they have been trafficked and they're being sexually abused as well, or whatever. Car washes are a massive thing in terms of trafficking of men. things like these guys who sort of turn up and will do your driveway sort of pretty cheap and things like that. There's a lot of evidence around that kind of stuff as well. And actually, if you're working with the homeless or in soup kitchens and places like that, traffickers will disguise themselves as homeless, befriend others, and then tell them that they've got this really amazing opportunity. So there's all sorts of places where this stuff can happen. I think also when I was working with Stop the Traffic, I spent some time with the tri-boroughs in central London, so Kensington, Chelsea, Westminster. And you'd think of places that are that affluent as not having a problem, but there it was domestic abuse, domestic servitude was the issue, because you've got the super rich and they've trafficked in these girls to be domestic servants. And then also on the other side, you've got sort of women being trafficked for sexual abuse because people have got the money to spend on it. So all different places have all sorts of different issues, really.
Chiama's with us, and she said, thank you for having this conversation. It's often hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
And as far as grooming goes, have you found that people who want to groom young children are drawn to certain areas?
There's certainly been a lot of proof in the past that places like children's homes are viewed as something of a holding pen for children who could then be groomed. And that's because the traffickers will sort of clue into the vulnerabilities of a person. So certainly, and I wouldn't say it's 100%, but every single person that I worked with who was a victim of trafficking had a history of abuse or child abuse. And so that made them vulnerable in terms of self-esteem, in terms of confidence, in terms of opportunity, and all of those different things. And so the traffickers are really, really clever, and they play into those vulnerabilities. So actually children who are in the care system and things like that is definitely sort of a place where they're vulnerable, or with difficult family backgrounds and all that kind of thing as well. But they're just, I mean, they're so clever. And I think what I find really frustrating is that traffickers are so intelligent with what they do, and if only they would use their intelligence for something else. And that's a bit of a naive kind of point of view, but it's they're so often one step ahead, and really understand, they know how to use technology and all of that stuff. So
using what they know for not good things. I'm trying to figure out how to word this. So oftentimes, as you said, human traffickers, but anyone who wants to take advantage of the vulnerable will look out for certain signs online. And I know online is a big place for predatory behavior. What can we do to be looking out for that kind of thing, both for ourselves, other adults who might be vulnerable, and children? What advice do you have in that regard?
So I'd say, I mean, if I talk about children first, it's really difficult. So when I'm doing sort of the training with people, I think there's a big kind of fear of parenting in the online world. Like it's this whole big scary place. And actually the key to remember is it's just parenting. There's so much that you would do as a parent offline that has the same standard online. So for me, the key is working with your children to help them understand their online world, because we don't want children to grow up incapable of being adults, and to grow up being incapable of surviving online. So you wouldn't put a 3-year-old on the tube into London to go shopping, but by 15 you're expecting, or whatever age, you're expecting children to be able to do that. They're first learning to cross the road safely holding your hand, then, do you know what I mean? So that it's a gradual learning, and actually working with your children to help them understand the consequences of their behavior, or what sites are safe, what sites aren't safe, how to look out for something that doesn't feel right, what red flags are, help them to understand healthy relationships. They can spot something that doesn't feel good. All of those things are really, really important, and that is essentially parenting. And I would say the other thing for parents, carers, is to really educate yourself on the online world and understand it, but also get your children to teach you about their online world. Be interested in what they're doing, so that you're not only talking to them about rules, regulations, or taking away screen time when they've done something wrong. you're actually involved. In terms of vulnerable adults and things, I mean, it depends on vulnerability, doesn't it? Some people might be vulnerable because they have a limited mental age, in which case you're kind of working with them as though they're children anyway. Some people have vulnerability because they're just broken, in the same way as people get trafficked or whatever. I think it's quite difficult. It's quite tricky. I think it's looking out for the people that you know, really. Certainly older people are also more vulnerable to scams and things like that. So, for example, with my parents, my mum's very good on the internet, you know, but if she gets an email through that looks a bit dodgy, she just forwards it to me.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm just like, ignore that, block that. Don't worry about it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And to remember, boundaries are so important. And nice isn't always nice. I mean, really hold those boundaries. Not everyone is your best friend online.
Exactly.
It's really important to remember that. Chioma just said, many parents are scared of the online space, and education is key. The children are more tech savvy and parents can learn from them.
We also had Tim Son say
Hi,
hello.
Hi, Tim. Hi, friend.
Yeah, I think try not to be afraid and just trying to learn, explore it for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm guilty of not listening here, so apologies. But your new business, is that related to trafficking, or is that child protection in some other way? What service are you providing in your new business? Give you a chance to pitch it to anybody who might be randomly watching YouTube and come across this.
So the overall umbrella for it is safeguarding training. I have got so many different experiences in different areas that I'm sort of focusing on one thing at a time and building it up. But for me, the important thing is I work very relationally. So it's also about, say, an organisation approaching me and saying, this is our need. And I would be completely honest, can I fulfill that need or not? So the online safety training for foster carers kind of fell into my lap, and then it's become a bit known. So that's sort of growing. So I think it's a really important focus coming out of lockdown and all, you know, the way the internet's been used so much more. People are so much more sort of online. So I think it's a really important one to be focusing on. And because I've really only just properly launched, I've been really kind of getting that right and building on that. Like I said, I'm working on another project, putting together some safeguarding training, which would be for executive directors and things like that for some charities, which will be their sort of, you know, the training you have to have every 3 years to keep you up to date. So I'm working on that piece as well. With one of the foster care groups from one of the boroughs, they also know that I can do some training around trafficking, so they're going to come back to me on that. So there are definite pockets of, you know, of expertise on. I haven't necessarily written everything yet. So it's a slow build, and I kind of don't want to go crazy fast and lose control of it. So I'm just building up as things come to me, as I meet people, as I interact, as I build those relationships. Because as I say, for me, working relationally is the most important thing.
Absolutely. Let me ask you about this, because you're teaching safeguarding to foster families, the foster youth organizations. But prior, you have a history of building relationships in the youth work world. Tell us about that, because you've done some really neat things in building these relationships to where I jumped on and said, can we do it again? Tell us about that.
Am I doing the history of my Twitter life? Is this what we're on now? Yeah?
Twitter life and your hashtag. Okay. And I know Tim was wondering about this too, because of the correlation between the youth workers that we've chatted with and the hashtag you created. Tell us about this.
Okay, so for UK youth workers in the Christian youth work world, there was a thing called the Youth Work Summit. And so when I went to the very first one, they had all the tweets screen behind the people on the stage. And I was like, a bit unsure of this Twitter thing, blah, blah, blah. But I got persuaded to sign up. So it's all Youth Work Summit's fault, basically. So I signed up, got to know some different youth workers. We were at a few other different events. So we kind of knew that we were genuinely real life people who did this work. And we were having these massive conversations, and there were a lot of kind of in-jokes going on. So one was about youth workers being addicted to caffeine, because we did so much one-to-one work in coffee shops that you're in public and all of that stuff. So we had this whole caffeine addict youth work. We were having so many conversations and people were joining to the point we ran out of room. You know, when you have to at everybody and then no space. Yeah. So we came up with YW Chat as a hashtag, which meant loads of us could join. And it got taken up by Youth Work magazine, because some of the guys from Youth Work magazine were the ones that were running Youth Work Summit, and we got to know them all, etc., etc. So YW Chat took off, and then Children's Work magazine then had CW Chat, and that was all happening. And then the magazines merged, and it became YC, so Youth and Children's Work Chat. Which has now morphed into Youth and Community Work Chat. But this whole caffeine addict youth worker thing, what happened was literally, this was 10 years ago yesterday, I got an email through with the top 10 coffee shops in London. And we'd all been saying, oh, we should meet up. So as a joke, I tweeted, anyone up for a coffee crawl instead of a bar crawl? We had one planned for London. There was one, I think, happening in Manchester, and one in the southwest, and potentially one up in Scotland as well. I wasn't going to all of them. I was only doing the London one. And it became a thing. So we probably had about 4 or 5 of those over a few years, where we all met in London. I found 3 or 4 independent coffee shops, and we did a coffee shop crawl through the day, met different people, all got to know each other, and some incredible lifelong friendships have been formed. So I then was running the tweet ups at Youth Work Summit. When we went to the Soul Survivor festivals, I organised when we were all going to get together as YW Chat people, and all that kind of stuff. So we had like these tweet ups and stuff, and it just became this incredible community, which then, you know how it is, you then go deeper. So you become friends on Facebook, and we're all staying with each other, and we've just some incredible friendships have grown out of that. So that's what happened. And I know next time you're in the UK, Christelle, we're going to rebirth the coffee shop crawl. So that you can meet everyone over here. Yeah.
Right. Christelle's a Twitter celebrity now, so she's probably too busy.
I know. Well, I'm hoping she'll grace us with her presence, and you know, we can get autographs and stuff.
I asked Gabriella if when I come over, she would put together another coffee crawl. Even though I'm not a youth worker, I feel like I know. And then now Tim, of course, Tim has to come too, and so he'll bring his social media friends, and it'll just be all of London.
So we're going to have to let these coffee shops know in advance, because they're going to be like, what the hell's going on here? All these people turning up.
Well, I don't know about your experience, but a lot of the time with these events, like a load of people say they come and then they don't turn up. So Tim.
Nope, that's not what happens.
Yeah,
that's not what happens. I'll tell you what, the first one was like a really super dodgy multiple blind date, because most of us hadn't all met each other. And so at the first venue, I was sat there with a couple of friends who I did know, who were part of with this piece of paper with hashtag YW Chat, hashtag coffee shop, kind of like holding it. And like, as people were coming and going, does that look like what? No, okay, don't.
Yeah,
people coming up going, are you part of this youth work thing? You're, you know, this person, that person.
It's really hard actually with those meetup groups, because if you don't know what people look like, especially, and like some people's Twitter photos are nothing like what they look like. And
one of the guys actually made a t-shirt with his Twitter handle on the front and all the hashtags on the back. So it was just like it was great. It was really good fun.
I don't know, Tim, did you recognize me the first time we met? We met one time in person. I mean, it was hard to miss. I'm like this, but
I mean, Christelle is quite distinctive anyway. I mean, it's not.
I was going to say, were you your usual self, Christelle?
Yes, it's the mad person with the hands flying around is Christelle.
It's not hard. Okay, Gabriella, I want to talk about something that's so important, because you just did a swim. And we're going to make this a little bit more personal here. You just did an amazing swim to raise money for an organization, and there's a reason behind this. And I want to say her name, Bex. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about the power of Bex, what she means to you, and why you were raising money this past weekend. And I'm just going to kind of throw it out there for the last few minutes too, because it's such a beautiful story.
Yeah. So Bex Lewis, Dr. Bex L on Twitter, etc., was a friend of mine. First met her on Twitter, and most people first met Bex on Twitter because she's basically the social media queen. She had been doing stuff on social media well before other people. So back in, I think it was 2014, she'd won an award with another friend for doing this online church stuff, was very prolific in all that kind of ministry. And she was just one of these people who made every single person she ever met, whether it was online or face-to-face, made them feel like you were the center of her world. She was just completely inclusive. Everybody was of equal value. She could see people's gifts and talents, and she could draw out confidence in you. And she was just this most incredible person. She was incredibly intelligent as well. She had a PhD. She'd done all this work in sort of the World War II propaganda. So the whole keep calm and carry on stuff, she'd actually done a lot of the research behind that, because it was the one poster of a set of 3 that didn't get used in World War II as propaganda. And it was discovered by a bookshop by accident up in Scotland, and she'd already done a load of research stuff. I can't remember the exact timeline, but that was like her real expertise as well. And she really held her intelligence lightly. So you didn't feel like, oh my gosh, she's so intelligent and I can't level with her. She was just an all-round amazing person. She got breast cancer, and then a couple of years ago, she came back. So she had metastatic breast cancer, stage 4 cancer. And she sadly died in February of this year. Most people, on average, people with Mets live 2 to 3 years. So she lived for 2 years. But she turned that into campaigning and joined groups online and made loads of new friends. She didn't slow her life down as far as she possibly could. She actually got stuck out in New Zealand last year in the first lockdown. She'd gone out there to rewrite her book around parenting children in a digital age, to kind of update it. And then all the lockdowns happened and she got stuck out there. And so, I mean, and she just, yeah. So she was traveling, she was doing her thing. One of the things she did was wild swimming. So when she passed away, there was a few things that happened. And the first was realizing her influence, because there were loads of people that we had as mutual friends and so on. But all these people kind of, you were like, oh my gosh, she's friends with this person, this person, this person. She's influenced this person, that person, whatever. And to the extent where on the day that she died, she ended up trending on Twitter. And I think got to like number 8 trending on Twitter, which would have made her really embarrassed because she was an incredibly humble person, and also would have found it hysterical. And it was just like, oh my gosh, you know. So we gathered as a group on Facebook, and we had some various different things that we did together, loads and loads and loads of us. And I put out there, and I thought, oh, do you know what, I should do a wild swim to raise funds for Met's breast cancer. But I knew I'd back out, so I put it on the group. I thought, I'll put it public and I can't back out. And her cousin Hannah said, oh, I'll come. And another really good friend of ours, Emma, said, oh, I'll do it with you as well. So on Saturday just gone, we did our wild swim in Hertfordshire, in a lake. It was very wild. We walked for 2.5 miles to find the best entry point. It was freezing. It was the water was 13 degrees. And it was hilarious. We laughed so much. We did our swim, and we were initially aiming to raise £500, and so far we're up to almost 1,300, which is incredible. And breast cancer now have agreed that everything raised in Bex's name will go specifically to researching metastatic breast cancer. And so in total, all of her friends who've raised money in her name so far is now gone over the £10,000 mark, which is just, can't express like how amazing that is. But that's what we did. And it meant everything. It was really emotional, really funny. She was known for always wearing red lipstick, so we wore red lipstick, and it stayed on the whole time in the water. We got rained on. It was free.
Such a beautiful story. Chioma, excuse me, Chioma's listening, and Chioma was one of our guests a few months ago, and she said she was a phenomenal woman. She was amazing. I had met her, Bex Lewis. She typed out her name. And I heard so many stories, and that's why I wanted to ask you about her. And I saw the red lipstick the week of her passing, and my boyfriend James had an opportunity to stay at her home at one point. And so to know the impact that she had, I really wanted to hear that story because it's inspiring for all of us, I think. Yeah. As we end, tell us the biggest lesson you learned from Bex.
She was very, very strong on making sure that we didn't say online and in the real world. It was online and offline. And I think I just learned the power of friendship really from her. And just people's value and worth. She made everyone feel really, really special. And to just keep on doing the thing that you're doing, plug away at it, it's worthwhile. Yeah, so many things. She was so much fun as well. So much fun. Yeah. So didn't take things too seriously, you know. So have a laugh, care about people, friendships first. Yeah.
Beautiful. Gabriella, thank you so much for being with us. This was really fun. So much fun. I love chatting with you. We had a great laugh last night as well.
Oh my gosh.
So much fun.
Oh, there's such a vegetable club.
You'll be meeting everyone soon.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for being on, and I'm going to try and not screw up the ending like I did last week. For anybody who's watching the replay on YouTube, there should be down there somewhere. There should be a card to say you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah, something like that.
There we go.
Grow up. And has Crystal got anything else to say?
I do. Have a great day, my friends. See you soon. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous. I had